Hey guys, it's Shell.
And Kenz, welcome back to the Effortless Podcast. Today we are going to get into some relationship stuff, which is kind of actually a heavy topic.
Yeah. Before we get started though, I'm over here trying not to laugh because I really want you to tell everybody about how you told the police officer that you're a really good person to get out of getting a ticket.
First of all, I am a really good person. The second,
But I feel like if you tell a police officer, please don't give me a ticket, I'm a really good person. They're probably like, yeah, sure.
like that though.
Okay, wow. Explain
So
yourself.
I'm driving to the wedding that I'm shooting, right? So I'm like, gotta get there. And behind me, a little motorcycle cop comes, wee, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I pull over and I'm like, I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't speeding. I'm like,
The 1-2 times you're not speeding around your
Mr. Officer. So he comes.
Could you imagine you're like, wee.
No, so then he comes over to my window. I'm like, hi. And he's like, are your tabs really expired since 2022? I'm like, first of all,
As if it's like 5 years ago.
Like,
Yeah, well,
it's
almost Halloween.
Anyways, so I'm like, yeah, it's like been on my to-do list to get done. I'm just
Sorry,
busy.
COVID
happened, you know. And so then he's like, okay. And I'm like, do you need my license? He did.
Duh.
So I'm like trying to like get it out of my, you know how it's like in the wallet, there's like this sticky plastic thing
Yeah.
you put your license under. So I'm like trying to pull it out. I literally like was taking me, I'm not even kidding, 5 minutes to get it out.
Were you nervous too?
Not really. I was like, I didn't do anything. I knew that it was fine. I knew I was going to get like arrested or something. And then I like am struggling and he's like, well, it's a good thing if you can't get it out because it means you probably don't get pulled over that often. And I was like, yeah, I'm a really good person. And he like looks at me like kind of laughs and I'm like, yeah.
Because only bad people get pulled over.
I was just trying to get him to like, you know,
Give him sympathy. Which he did.
Yeah, he gave me a fix-it ticket. $25 instead of like $150. I just have to go get it fixed. AKA
Yeah, that's
Greg
nice.
needs to go get it fixed for me.
Yeah. And then Greg told the kids that you went to jail or something.
Yeah. But anyways, that's all. I am a good person and, you know.
Right. I just thought it was so funny. She like calls me. She's like, oh my gosh, I just got pulled over, blah, blah, blah. And she's like telling me, and she's like, but I told him I was a really good person. I was like, what?
Yeah, it's true.
So funny.
Hold on. I don't know if we're recording. I was literally just thinking, I think I pushed the button, but maybe I didn't. Oh, we're recording. You think Brian can edit this back in, probably? Okay. Sorry, Brian. I had a panic. Okay, we need to pick up where we like left off, I guess. Yeah. So good person. Little ticket. It's fine. But that's enough about me. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the
episode.
Do you want to break what we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So I feel like there has been so much for myself, so much like anticipation maybe is the right word for this because I do want to share it, but it's like super out of my comfort zone and it still brings up a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's if I like mess up words or I'm like, oh, I don't know exactly what to say or something, I feel like
I'll complete your sentences for you.
yeah, honestly. Or I just feel like there's so much in my head. Like I had to like write a bunch of it down to make sure that I express it how I want it to be received.
Okay.
And if I like pause for a second and I'm like, I don't know how I want to say this or something, I feel like
It's okay. We'll go work with me. No with you.
Yeah. So when I was doing some notes last night, I kind of wrote it down into like 4 stages.
Okay.
And the first stage is going to be like the actual relationship.
Okay.
But before I get started, I know I mentioned this yesterday or whatever day not yesterday, last episode.
Okay.
The reason I want to tell my story is because I really just want to help other people in this situation because I think that there can be a stigma or some judgment in these type of situations where it's like you're only in this situation if you like came from a bad background or like a broken background or you're like not a strong individual or something like that, which maybe not, but I think that from having gone through this, I have had a lot of judgment, and I just want to kind of like break that. And
which is fair.
Yeah. And then also the other thing is I really, really want to emphasize that I really don't ever want this to come across as me being like an unfortunate situation, because I feel like my whole life I have been so blessed. Like,
too blessed to be stressed.
Exactly. And truthfully, like, I never, ever, ever wanted to come across as like my story being, or my experience being like, poor me. Because I have never thought that, and I never want to. Like, I am a truly like very fortunate person for my upbringing, for literally my whole life.
Right.
So that's why I'm just so strongly saying that, like, it's just to help other people, and hopefully if there are other people in this situation, or people helping people in this situation, they could get something out of this.
Yeah.
And I also want to, if someone ever sees this or hears this and feels like they want to reach out to me, like, I'm so open to talking with them, like, more specifically.
Totally.
And I'm not going to go into any specific details of my relationship, because I feel like it's just not needed. And if someone like needed more information or something, they could like reach out to me or whatever.
Right.
So first, going into the actual relationship part, this is a relationship that I have spent the majority of my adult life in.
Yeah.
So, and it was kind of the perfect storm in my lifetime. So the more serious part of the relationship started within a couple of years after my dad died, which there's a whole other like sequel stuff with that, I'm sure, or like sequel or like
I think season about.
I'm sure you could go off like a whole different like
tangent
of just that, like a young female dad dies who you're close with, who had a huge like positive impact in your life, and then you meet a guy who's like not the best for you. Right. So there's like a whole other, I'm sure, psychological thing. Side to that.
I don't even focus on that.
No, but it's just kind of like, that's where my perfect storm kind of started.
Right. Okay.
And then I got into this relationship, and honestly, I like the good times were so good. Like, I still haven't, I haven't like dated a ton, but I haven't met anybody that I felt like I have as much in common with. Where like we both just were like so driven and like literally laughed so hard. We were always had so much fun together
and had like the same goals.
Goals, so many, like just so many good times. Yeah. Like I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, when it was good and fun, it was so good and so fun. But then when I talk about the tougher times, you kind of have to remember too that these were like trickled into the relationship. So it's not like it was like all good for like a month and then like all bad for a month. Like it was like trickled within each other.
Which so it's kind of how a relationship like this works.
Exactly. And then it's like super, super good. And then there's like not a little bit. There's an explosion. And then there's good. Yeah. And then, so it's just the cycle.
Right. And that's the hard part probably for a lot of people, that like you hold on to like the good moments. Yeah. And then you kind of like dismiss the ones that are the red flags that you should be focused on. Yes. But then it's like, that's part of that like manipulative, abusive cycle. Yeah. That I'm just laughing.
I know.
You don't like the word abuse.
I know.
But that's what it is. And I feel like that's part of like the thing that like you need to like, or, you know, that people need to understand, that like just because there's good times doesn't mean that it's like,
or that outweighs
the like issues.
Right. So throughout all of the relationship, I had a ton of emotions that at the time I didn't know, like I knew I was feeling different emotions, but I didn't know why. Sometimes you do. I did for specific reasons, but other times it's like you're feeling this way and you're like uneducated about it. Yeah. So you don't know why you're feeling it and you don't know what you're feeling. Like you kind of put a name to it.
Of like feelings that you felt.
Yeah.
That later.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to like say that because I'm going to now put names to them, but just at the time when I was feeling these feelings, I didn't like, I felt sad at times or like hurt. And those are type of names I could put to them. But like, then later now, like looking back, I'm like, oh, it was this, this, and this. And now that I've been through all the recovery of it, there's names put to it, which is a huge part of your recovery, which we will talk about.
Okay.
But like in the relationship, there was a lot of sad times.
Yeah.
A lot of feeling hurt. And like during the time, this is what I would describe it as, like sad, hurt, betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And very, like, it didn't start like this, but just throughout the relationship, it was like good, bad, until the bad times just like, they just like beat you down so much. And again, I was in this relationship for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just you adapt to it until you just can't adapt
because it
any
becomes
longer.
your norm or what you accept. And I feel like that's kind of where you got to the point of like throughout the amount of time you guys were together, I feel like there was times that you would try to break up with him or like you did break up with him. But just because of the cycle and like even the stat of what is the stat on like going
I don't
back
remember
to,
what it is.
it's like
I remember
crazy,
looking at it.
like 20 something time. Like it's like they have such a hold on you mentally that you feel like you need them. Or that, like, that's just, like, your comfort. Even though they've hurt you so much, it still is, like, what you know and what, like, somehow feels good.
And I'll still never understand, even, like, as much therapy and, like, research I've done, I still don't fully understand, like, I mean, obviously, it's just the, like, manipulation. And I understand, like, how it happens. But it's just crazy the bond that you build with them. And like, I had this sense of loyalty to him that was like unbreakable.
Even though he like betrayed you and like your
times.
trust and stuff.
Yeah. And so there was a sense of loyalty. And it's hard because the people who know, like in my head, I'm like, okay, I know that I have these people who like love me, for example, like you or like my sister or my friends. And they're telling me one thing, but then this other person who you also love is like telling you stuff too. I know, I like can't look at you. So it's super confusing.
Yeah.
And then, but obviously, like I said too, during this time, we were like accomplishing things together. We were doing fun things. So it's hard to remember too that like, it wasn't all bad. And I honestly like was so in love with him. And I like still was for a very, very long time. And it's just hard to think of somebody who you think loves you. And I do. I mean, I do think that he loved me.
Yeah.
The best that he could. But would hurt you like they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to like get back on. I can't look at you for a second. But you just get so broken down. Okay, that's where I was headed with that. So like the good times are good, the bad times or the hard times are hard, and then you just accept it. So like we said, I had been in this relationship for so long that I just accepted how I was treated. And it just like warps your sense of a relationship or your knowledge of a relationship. Like you see other relationships and you're like I would see yours, and like all of my closest friends are in great marriages. And yeah, there's tough times in marriages, but I just knew, I'm like, my relationship is different. Like it's just different. And I knew coming from like a great family, like my parents gave me a very good example.
You understood what a good, healthy relationship looked like. It wasn't like you said, even you were brought up in a home where like you didn't have a good sense of like what a healthy marriage should look like. Like you were fully aware.
Right. Yeah. And it's like I still exactly. So I knew what a good relationship was, and I knew mine was off, but I didn't know how it was off. Like I knew certain things like like there was obvious things that shouldn't have happened. And in my head, I'm like, that was wrong. Right. This was wrong. But a lot of it is so subtle, and it just takes time. And then it's like your way of thinking changes and you literally just accept how you're treated.
Mm-hmm.
And
then you get to a point where like all of a sudden it's like you practically are dependent on this person because they've over time warped your brain to think that like you need them, you're not enough for anybody else. You're not like you have to live up to like these standards that
or like
they're
unattainable.
like setting for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I feel like that is part of it. And then that's where you feel like dependent on them. It's like, no, I couldn't ever leave them because
what else?
Like change, I mean, they change your whole mindset as far as like what normal even is.
Yes. Yeah. And so for me, and also I would also like to point out, there's a lot of, I'm going to say females because I'm just looking at it from a female point of view. But in these type of relationships where the female doesn't have like the financial abilities to get out of a relationship, or they don't have the support system, or they don't have like X, Y, and Z, they just can't get out of it. I had all of that and I still took me however long it did.
Yeah.
So it's just a really hard position to be in. And so once you're in it for however long, like you just get so beaten down. I had like no self-esteem. My self-confidence was like 0. I'm super thankful because I am a very ambitious person. So like career-wise, I was still very driven.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that. And I refused to give up a lot of my relationships, like my core relationships, which made obviously a huge difference in
Did he want you to like give up your core relationships, or was that never really like an issue with him?
That was honestly never really an issue because I think it was just never going to happen.
Yeah. And he could still do whatever he was wanting to do.
Yeah. Like there was never
Wow.
manipulation or manipulative.
He could still manipulate you.
Yeah. Okay.
Even with your core relationship.
I was like that. We did move away. So that I think made a difference, but also like one of my closest friends also lived where we moved. So there's not any, that wasn't ever an issue for me. But that's always something that I like valued so heavily. Yeah. So I'm very thankful for that. But yes. Okay. So then you like get to a point where I just felt so broken. And honestly, for me, it's a little bit ironic because the time when I personally felt the most broken and like mentally and emotionally was actually maybe one of the like most positive or like calmest times in the relationship. Like it was actually, I think, one of the times where it was like the most calm. Yeah. If that makes sense. Like there wasn't such like a dramatic ups and downs.
Because
Yeah. But I also think that's because I had fully accepted everything. Yeah. Like all of the
towards the end of it, you were ready to like get married.
I would have. Like I think he was planning to propose like not anytime like super soon, but like within the next year. Yeah. And I would have said yes. Like for sure. I had fully accepted all of it.
But that's just what your life was going to be.
And I was like telling myself I was happy. Like and I think parts of me were because it was one of those things that
on to the good.
Yeah. And I was like so in love with him. I would have done anything. So yeah. And honestly, a huge part of why I was able to get out of that relationship is you and your family for sure. And I took a travel nurse assignment away from him.
Right. You like literally physically had to.
I had to move. And when I took that travel assignment, that wasn't my intention. The intention was not like, it's not like before I left, I was like, I'm going to break up with him. Yeah. That was never my intention at all, actually. But I think I believe everything happens for a reason. Like God had a plan for sure. And so that's what ended up happening. Once I moved away, there was like physical separation, and then you just kind of start seeing things a little bit clearer. And I was able to break it off and break up with him. But
it wasn't just like a piece.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That's it.
No. So that's kind of like the phase 1, I guess, or like stage 1 of this process is the actual relationship. So I guess the main points I want to make about that is that it's not a relationship that like a certain type of person gets into. Any person can get into a relationship like this. It happens over time. It's kind of gradual. And then you just over time will adapt in situations kind of like to survive. And then you accept it a lot of times. Some girls don't, or people don't, and they're able to get out of it. I have a natural personality though to be loyal. That's like a personality trait of mine. And caring is like, I literally will like care for you until it's almost a fault of mine.
For sure.
And so I think the timing of it, my natural personality, and then the length of it.
Is your type of personality, do you know, like more likely to like, is it more about personality type versus like situation? Or like, you know what I mean? Like if you had a different personality type, do you think that you wouldn't have been, or is that, or is it more,
no.
or does that have nothing
It's like
to do
nature
with
versus nurture.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it's probably a combination for sure. For sure.
And like you said, it can literally happen to anybody if you have the right manipulator to like get you.
To get you. Yeah. But a couple of things I kind of skipped over because I was like, got a little emotional.
Fine.
But also the feelings I was feeling in the relationship too that are super important that I don't want to forget. There was multiple times where I thought I was crazy. Like certain things would happen and I'm like, I should be really upset about this, and I would be, but then having a conversation, I was always the one to apologize. No matter what. So like it could have been blatantly something that was not my fault.
Right.
But by the end of
evidence too.
Yeah. And then but by the end of it, I'm apologizing.
Yeah.
And every time I'd be like, if I'm like crying on the phone with you, I'm like, and you'd be like, well, why didn't you say this? Or why and not in a bad way, but you'd just be like, oh, did you say this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, honestly, like I didn't think to do that. Or yeah, I did, but I can't even remember what he said. Like I can't remember like the conversation, but I was always the one apologizing at the end of a conversation.
He was good at making it seem like it was your fault somehow, or like you should be the one to feel bad, or somehow like why would you even be questioning that or this or whatever.
Yeah. So, and those are all, now looking back, I know so much more about it, and I'm like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy, but
and it's so spot on.
It's so spot on.
Like that's like a normal
situation.
Or
Yeah. And then there was times where I'm like questioning like reality. Like certain things would happen and then I'm like, it's like it would be flipped and I'm like, I am psycho. Like I literally like, did that happen? Or like, I'm so dramatic. Like I'm making this up. Like I literally, I know that never, I'm never dramatic. No, which, okay, never mind. That was going to
point, but
literally going to go on a dramatic tangent. Never mind. But yeah, like I would literally question if stuff happened. And it's like, I know it did, but for some reason, he could really make it seem like I was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are also things that a lot of people go through and they don't know what it is. And
in some ways probably feel embarrassed to even like say anything because they're like, well, am I just like am I really crazy? Like, I'm not going to tell anybody this or like reach out because I've got to be the one that's like psycho. And now that we're going to talk about like the friend side of it in a different episode, but like even in those type of scenarios, I feel like those were so many of the times where I'm literally on the phone with you like, Shelly, I don't like, what do you like, are you serious right now? Like you cannot let him do that to you, or like, and you're like, I know. And it's like so hard as an outsider to like, literally hear what's happening and then to like express like reality. And then for you to still like be fogged over as far as like what is actually happening.
Right.
Which I think for a friend is a big process, learning curve as well. But we'll get into that later.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, like my sister will be frustrated or something. And I'm like, don't let him say that to you. It's just like, really? I'm like, okay, never mind.
Just keep like it. I understand where you're coming from.
Which we love.
Yeah.
Him. And it's never anything dramatic. But anyways, so in the relationship phase, it's just you get so broken down. I was like a shell of myself by the end of it. And I remember one thing that was like super eye-opening to me is we were on the phone one time and I was like going through one of my times. And you were like, Shelly, what if Carly was in this situation? Carly's my little sister. And I'm like, she's like, would you, like, how, is this okay? And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like I would be furious. Like 0% chance would I ever
like
let that, like, no, absolutely not. I would be like on fire. And so, but then that just opened my eyes because I'm like, why would I let something happen to me that I would like go ballistic on if so it happened to my little sister?
Yeah.
And that was like super eye-opening to me. And then at the very end, once I was like committed, like, okay, I'm going to get out of this relationship for the 18th, the 10 days.
I don't think it was quite 8.
Okay.
I wasn't 8 the statistic.
I think I did too.
Good job.
It was a conversation with your dad, and like Jeff is like the real MVP because he, we were just talking and he was like, any person who like makes you question your value or like your confidence or your self-esteem, like it's just time to like end that relationship. And it doesn't have to be like, I hate you, like in a bad situation. Like it just is like, okay, this is just not healthy and it's time to go our separate ways. Like it was such like a matter of fact conversation and it seemed so simple. But I was like, you're right. Like it's just, you got to protect your peace. Yeah. Right. Which that will all come back, obviously. And that's
Let's see it. Oh, there it is. Protect it.
Yes. So it's so, I mean, that's literally why I live by that. But now I do. But that is, can you think of anything that I'm like missing
for phase 1?
For phase 1, like the relationship, like the feelings I was feeling, it was very, I feel like I want to like recap my main points. Like the feelings you feel are super confusing. I was also getting like anxiety for like no reason.
Yeah.
I'm like a pretty relaxed, chill person, but for some reason during that time I could like feel getting more anxious, like gradually.
I mean, I feel like for you, the main bulk of the relationship was, like you said, a gradual progression of him just kind of stripping down everything that you knew to be true about yourself.
Yes.
And then by the end of it, like you said, you were kind of so broken that it was to the point where like you didn't really have an opinion about your own life or like anything because it was all about like, well, what would make him happy? What would he want? What, if I did this, like, what would he think? It was like you didn't have your own thoughts. And and that I think even overflowed into your relationships with other people because I feel like you're naturally a people pleaser. But I do feel like it got to the point where like everything that you did was simply to just like, well, what would somebody else want? And you really neglected like, well, what do I want?
Yeah.
And I think that that's like so important that like you were, like you said, just ready to accept that. And it wasn't about you anymore. Like, which obviously to a point like
happened
or that are like healthy, but it was to the point where like you were literally neglecting everything that you knew to be true about yourself and like accepting that like that didn't matter, like that you were so into just like pleasing whatever you can do. And that wasn't even enough anyways for him.
Right.
So then it was just like you were always,
it was like a constant
like searching and seeking, like trying to like be better in areas that like you were already great at. Like you didn't need to be better. You didn't need to do you know
things. Yeah. That's true. That's a good.
But I'm trying to think if there's like any other specific things that were like
that
I don't know what phase 2 is. So I don't know, like
phase 2 is getting out.
getting out.
I know. That sounds so dramatic.
Another point though too, even I remember this is like still really stands out to me, is like when we were driving through the bank when you were living here, or when you were here for like, I don't know, towards the end. And I was like,
I don't remember this.
No, I thought,
well, maybe I do. Maybe. Okay, keep going.
It was like after you had been here for a while, and it was like you thought you guys were probably gonna get married.
Okay.
And I remember being like, do you actually like want to marry this person? Like you've been away from him, and it's like you don't even really talk about it. Like you don't really seem like I feel like if you're in the stage of life where like you are about to get married, it's like you want to be with the person all the time. You're like obsessed with it. Like it should be like such an exciting thing. And I felt like you were at a point where it was like you didn't seem necessarily excited. I remember just being like, is this actually like what you want? And you weren't like, yeah, like it was like obvious it wasn't, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was soon after that like you ended things, but it was like clear that you were gonna just go through it because that's what was comfortable and what you knew, even though you knew it wasn't like the right thing. But that maybe was irrelevant to phase 1.
No, I feel like that's relevant. I feel like I'm glad that you said that, because it does become just such like I was like going through the motions.
Yeah.
And I was like telling myself I was happy, but you're just like so not yourself that you don't like you said, like I didn't even know what I wanted.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know.
And I feel like it's taken you quite a while to even get back. Like I feel like you're there now, but I feel like it took a long time to even like you really had to be like, no, what do I want? And like like retrain your brain to even like understand what that meant.
Yeah. So the initial breakup happened, and then it was like,
are we moving into phase 2?
We're moving into phase 2.
Phase 2.
Unless you have anything else. I think for phase 1, I think I covered most of what I, like the main points I wanted to. If there's anything that I think of like randomly later, I'll throw back in. But for phase 2, the initial breakup. Now, something I really want to make a point to, and I am not saying this to like discourage anybody or say how hard it was, but just for realistic expectations, there's this almost like facade that like, oh, the second you get out of a relationship like this, everything is bliss. You're finally away.
Yeah, it's like
freedom. You can do whatever you want. You're on your own, and all this weight is just lifted off of you, and you just like feel so free. And that is so not true.
Yeah. Well, or
like talk about like, at least like in my head, I'm thinking about this, like at least in the relationship, there's like a lot of good times.
Yeah.
And like you have so much fun with this person, and like you love them and you enjoy them for like, I would say like, I don't know, I was going to put percentage on it. There's like a high percentage where it's like
good.
Most of the time it's great. When you out, those times.
When you out.
It said when you get out. I think I did.
You said when you out.
When you're out, I think it's what I meant to
like,
say.
Oh, dang. Okay.
I'm getting really dramatic. When you get out,
okay,
those good times are gone.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have those to like balance out the hard times now. It's kind of like you have all of those same emotions and confusion and anxiety and like just because that person isn't your boyfriend anymore, like your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your emotions, and like all of that is still there.
You're still just like you're stripped away from that person, but then you're still the same place.
It's not like all of that just gets built up right away.
It's been broken down over a period of time. So it's not like it's just like I'm back.
Yeah, but it's like you, and like of course your support system is like you'll be so much better. Like you're gonna this weight will be lifted off you, and you're gonna feel so much better. And so I was expecting to like get out and the next week be like, okay, like yeah, let's do this. I'm great.
Wrong.
And I had that mentality at first. Like I was like, I can do what I want, and not in like a go get another boyfriend way, but just like live life way. And it was not like, and so that was so, number one, shocking. And then number two, I was so lost.
Yeah.
Like so lost. So like the self-esteem, that was just like still the lowest of the low. And then I was so confused. I thought I was crazy. I thought I had made the biggest mistake in my life breaking up with him. Like I was like, I had no identity. That was also one of the biggest things that gets lost in this type of relationship, because your identity is that person.
Yeah.
Like you said, I didn't, like things as small as like daily activities or like, what to do on the weekend, like the most simple decisions. It was like, I didn't know because I didn't know what made me happy.
Yeah.
Like, I remember telling you, like, if you were to ask me what makes you happy, I had no idea. Like, I was like, I literally don't know. Like, I didn't know who I am.
Distinguish, like, what you wanted versus what he wanted, or, like, like the intention behind, like, your own thoughts.
Because like, my whole life or my whole relationship was what made him happy. Yeah. So,
and you would bend over backwards to make him happy, and then he still wouldn't even like give.
Like it wasn't enough
as far as like
So then when I was like on my own, quote unquote, like it was like the confusion was just crazy. I felt like I was living in a tornado. I felt like the world was like spinning around me, and I was still like working, and like thankfully I was able to like focus. And still like be very driven in my career and continue relationships with my closest friends. But other than that, I was like so struggling. And I remember this is like so funny. Well, it's like sad but funny. We were at Trader Joe's, me, you, and Frankie and Joby. And we were just like walking down the aisle.
Sad.
And I literally just started crying. And there was no reason. I didn't know. I felt like this is probably you're gonna be like, what the heck? This is not true. But I felt like it was, I've never been pregnant, but how people talk about when they're pregnant and their emotions, and you're like, I'm crying and I have no reason. It's just like happened. Like I was like,
happened to me when I was pregnant.
But. I know. I felt like you weren't like super emotional, or like you didn't have
Greg
like super
say otherwise, but
or it's not like you were like dramatic or like one way or the other.
But this isn't about me, so
But I was just gonna say, like, I feel like that's kind of like the easiest thing I could equate it to. Like, I was just like crying, like I had tears that would streaming down my face.
Like just a burst of like emotion would hit you,
sadness.
And then all of a sudden, like you would just like break down, literally out of nowhere. Like there would be no triggers.
Yeah, at that time I was like, and then that's when I was like, I am so crazy. Like, what is happening to me?
Sign me up for
literally. I was like, and Frankie, she looked at me. Why are your eyes watering? Why are your eyes watering? And I'm like, nothing. I'm just it's my allergies.
Yeah.
But I literally couldn't even answer her. Like, I'd be like, I don't freaking know. Yeah. I feel like I'm living in a tornado. I don't know.
Frankie, this is what it's like to live in a tornado.
Yes. So, and then in another thing, so the identity thing was huge for me. I didn't have an identity. I didn't know. It's like my identity had been stripped. I was like in an identity crisis.
Can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah.
When you actually did the final breakup, leading up to that, like what were your feelings like? Like you felt pretty like strong.
Oh, no.
You did it.
I did it. But...
Or like do you feel like you were at a point where you were like, okay, I know, or I guess you sort of said that with like talking to my dad or like that kind of like events, and just being physically removed kind of like opened your eyes to the situation.
Being phically removed from the situation.
You were pretty strong when you like did
I
the breakup,
was.
And you had to do it over the phone, which is not as great.
Did.
Or I feel like if you didn't, it probably wouldn't have happened.
So I actually, what's weird is that I had a trip planned back down. My flights were booked and everything. But then 2 days before I was supposed to fly out, he could tell there was something wrong, or he was like, you're off.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
And he brought it up. And so I didn't want to.
You were going to go down there and do it.
I had my flights booked.
That's right. And you were going to break up with him.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. In my head, I was thinking you were planning on just doing it over the phone the whole time. But then you were kind of happy because you're like, well, now I feel like I can bring it up without having to go.
Well, because if it was one of those things where if I wouldn't have done it on the phone, it would have been like a lie. Because I would have lied to him and then flown down there and then did it. And that would have been like, I feel like that was kind of
bad.
Rude.
Yeah.
To do.
Because they're rude.
I mean, but like, I would have like, no, everything's fine. I'm great. I'm fine. And then like 2 days later, I'll see him and it's not fine.
Yeah.
So So it ended up being over the phone, but I did have an intention to go. And then I just didn't go on my flight, obviously, because why? But yeah, so initially getting out, and I didn't feel like strong necessarily going into the breakup, but what I did know, like the conversation with your dad was big. And then also, I just knew, like, I wasn't sure about anything else except for, I don't know why. I just knew that however I was feeling, I didn't want to keep feeling. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the only thing I was, like, 100% sure of. Like, I was like, if I was strong, it was stronger than that. Like, this, like, brokenness and hurt and whatever was not like, something that I was like, I'm not going to be able to, like, continue living my life like this. Yeah. It just wasn't going to work. So I would say, like, I felt confident in that. And that's, like, basically what I said, too, when I broke up. Like, I was like, I have these feelings, and I just don't want to keep feeling this way. Yeah. And so, even though I couldn't express the feelings.
Just fine. I feel like in those scenarios, it's almost like you have to be brief.
Yeah, like, I can't, and I couldn't express why I felt that way, but I just did, and I knew it wasn't, like, gonna keep working. Mm-hmm. So, yes. So the initial get out, is not easy. Mm-hmm. It's hard and it's super confusing, but this is one of the main reasons why I am expressing my experience, because if someone had been through it and was, like, telling me everything, like, literally, this is what you're going to do, and, like, broke it down like this, mm-hmm. I could have avoided at least 6 months of, like turmoil and, like, brokenness and continual, like, self-confidence issues, because I kind of navigated it by myself because I was uneducated about these situations, and I was
well, and I feel like in your head, even though, like, even as outsiders, it's like, this is a really bad extreme situation, you still downplayed it. Mm-hmm. And the fact of, like, you didn't want to make it seem like it was as big of a deal as it was, just for your own, like, in your head, you still felt kind of crazy, or like, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
Or, like, you would question that all the time. Like, was it actually as bad? Or, like, I'm saying this, but, like, wait, was it like that? It's like, you literally were questioning, like, things that happened even after the fact of, like,
yes.
Wait, did that actually happen, or am I just being crazy? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that would help if you knew your feelings were valid from the start.
From the start. Exactly. And so, and then in that, I think it was, like, around, like, a 6-month span. I think so. Like, from the initial breakup to starting to get, like, professional help. Mm-hmm. You're just going through these, like, emotional cycles. Like I said, the identity crisis, not knowing myself anymore, like, not knowing what made me happy, like, daily decisions. And then all of those emotions and confusion that still happen in the relationship just pour over. Yeah. And then you feel like you're alone dealing with it instead of, like, mixed in with happy times. But it made a huge, huge difference that I lived here. Mm-hmm. And your kids
really distracted you.
Yeah. Which I feel like if you get on my Instagram, it's like, oh, does Shelly have 3 kids? Or, like, it's a little bit confusing because of how close I am with your kids. Mm-hmm. But I feel like after people hear this, they're like, it makes so much more sense, and our bond too. Yeah. Like, it's just something that is, like, so strong. Like, like they literally like helped me through, oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. Like one of the hardest things of my life. So that's also like, I mean, obviously there's like great, but I love them extra. I love them extra. And so that was like, obviously like God, I think, orchestrated that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But so a support system is obviously huge. But we're going to talk about that later. So the initial get out is, I guess, going back to my previous statement is, it doesn't get easier.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually it does, but at the initial, it does not. And I think,
well, and it's harder really than like just being in the relationship, even if it's bad. Because like you said, you hold on to the good times. So you get out, you're alone, you're literally starting over. You have to like rebuild yourself from ground zero.
Yes.
And on your own decide like, who am I? What do I want? What am I going to like surround myself with?
Yeah. And I didn't even have like kids with this person. So like being in a situation like this and you have kids or like if you don't have a financial way out, like those type of things, like thank goodness I did.
Yeah.
And I got JoJo.
Got the dog.
I almost didn't for a while. There was a back and forth. But thank goodness. And I would just like to put out there, JoJo was like such my lifeline.
Yeah.
Like
your emotional support dog for real.
For real.
No,
and like even like in the relationship, like him and I
bonded.
I had some rough nights and homeboy was like
your guy.
He's my guy.
Yeah. He was there for
yeah, he'd just come and like lay with me, my little JoJo bug. He wasn't allowed on the couch, but when I was home alone, he was.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, JoJo. So why our bond is so strong.
He's done that with you.
Yeah, I love him. Anyways, if anybody doesn't know, it's my dog, JoJo. But yeah, so the initial get out is super confusing and I still hadn't made sense of the emotions I was feeling still. And so that's why I'm like, want to like shout it from the rooftops that if you're ever in this type of a relationship or you know somebody who is, or you're a friend of somebody,
or even if you're just questioning like, are my feelings valid?
Yeah.
Regardless of what those feelings are.
Yes. It's like they are so valid and you're not crazy. And like when you first get out, you're not going to feel so much relief. Like maybe there's like a little bit of relief depending on your situation, but like it's a battle and you just have to keep going. You just have to keep we'll get into that. But and I'm like very much not talking about my support system right now just because we're going to do like a bigger portion of that later. But I just want to like really express that it's so normal for you to feel like super broken at first and super confused and like not well. Like you just don't feel great. I mean, I got to a point where, and this is because this is the reason why I'm putting so much emphasis on this, is because I was so uneducated about these situations that I got to a point where I was so confused and like unsure of what I was going through that I wasn't eating, like physically wasn't eating for almost a week, I think, straight. And when I say I wasn't eating, like I like physically couldn't eat. I was like so nauseous. I was, my sister, I was like away and I was in California. I hadn't been eating and my sister Uber Eats to me.
McDonald's. It's like, I can't even.
From Washington to my house in California. And she's like, I'm like, who's on my door? She's like, go to the door right now, get your, and I was like, you Uber Eats to McDonald's? Because I like love McDonald's fries.
You're like puking.
I literally couldn't. I still couldn't. But it got very, very bad. I was in such a dark place and I couldn't eat, but I was obsessed with working out.
Yeah.
And I remember like being at the gym. I remember telling you this.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm like, get out of the gym.
I'm
Why
like,
are you there?
I was still working out. Like, you just make decisions that are like so unhealthy for yourself. Like, by no means do I think that's okay to like not eat and work out.
Or just not eat at all.
Or literally just not eat. And I'm like at the gym feeling so emotional. I'm literally having tears come down my cheeks at the gym. I haven't eaten. I'm all dizzy. Like,
Yeah,
it was like
to go down.
such a bad. I remember a guy he's like, "Are you okay?"
Fine.
I like can barely stand. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You make questionable decisions. Like, I was making decisions that were so out of character for me because I was so confused and felt so lost. But it's because I didn't know what I was feeling and what I was going through. And that's why I want to tell people, like, it makes sense and you're not crazy and this is all part of the process.
Yeah.
But if you know that before that, you can avoid so much of that.
Even are like questioning.
Yeah, like you're still going to have some confusion, but like the points of like not getting to the point where you're like not eating, you're like making detrimental decisions for yourself can be avoided for sure if you like know where you're going to go and what's happening. So that's kind of
phase 1 and
that was phase 2. Okay. Phase 1 and phase 2.
Should we go into phase 3 and 4 next week? Break it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Or do you want to?
I feel like there's just so much that, yeah.
Or to wrap up
3 is going to be pretty long.
Or to wrap up today, is there any other like main points about anything at the intro of this phase 1 and 2? Or just like anything else to like
wrap it up?
Or like,
I guess like,
I know you kind of like emphasized your key points.
I know I tried to, but I feel like it's hard because it's like things will like pop into my head and I'm like, oh shoot, I want to say that. I guess for like the main points of like phase 1 and 2 is, phase 1 is kind of the main points are it happens gradually. It's mixed in with very good times. You're so in love with this person and you're super confused. There's a lot of confusion happening. And then phase 2 is just you are validated. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
And I want to get that known, I guess.
So next week we'll tell you how to get it known.
Next week it's like focused on how to get it known and how to start your healing process. And then a huge part is on your support system. And then the last part is forgiveness, which is really hard. And I'm in the process of that. I feel like I haven't even like fully. And this all is like over a very long span of time.
Yeah, it's not like overnight.
No.
But everybody can get there.
Everybody can do it. Yeah. It's doable. It's
doable, but daunting.
Yeah. One of the things that when I was in actually the getting out phase, I should have mentioned, I remember being on the phone with my mom and I'm like crying so hard I can like barely talk. And she's like, Shelly, you just got to keep fighting through. And I was like, literally, I think about that to this day. And I was like, it's like one of those times you want to hear your mom like, it's okay, honey. Everything's going to be okay, blah, blah. And she's like,
just keep.
You literally just have to fight. And I'm like, okay, you're right. Like,
you're a fighter.
Yeah.
I'd take you to fight anyone.
UFC fights. So you just got to keep fighting. It's worth it.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for like sharing your story though, because I feel like it's something that is obviously hard for you to talk about.
Yeah, it's like, very uncomfortable,
but ultimately, like you said, if there's anybody out there that it can help, that's worth a lot.
And then next week is also very, very close to my heart, like your support people. Because that makes that makes or breaks the getting out for sure. For sure. Yeah. So.
Well, thanks, Shell, for getting vulnerable in the pod today.
I feel like I should have had an ending happy quote or something.
Oh.
Well,
you're doing good now.
Yeah.
There's hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
Yeah. But anyways, I think that's a wrap on today.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. And join us next week for phase 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Shelly's relationship journey. Bye, guys.